Welcome to Crossing Lines. I'm your host, Bianca Porras. In this episode, I spoke with Ben, a teacher from Upland, and Stephanie, a student from Pomona, who both share their concerns surrounding ICE raids and deportation happening in California that creeps closer to home each day. Having parents that are immigrated to this country. This is Trump's second term. He really made it the face of his campaign when running for re-election was that he was going to crack down on immigrants and illegals in the United States. What were some thoughts that were going through your head when all that was kind of happening?
I think the first thing that uh, came to mind was definitely fear. Definitely thinking about my family, thinking about the steps that we might want to take to even move out of the country. Those were actually the first thoughts. It was like, okay, we know what happened the last time he was elected. The fact that he was elected was shocking, you know, and the fact that he's been reelected is even more shocking. The first kind of thoughts were like, we need to make a plan, or we need to figure out what we are going to do if our rights, if our freedoms, if we as Latino people are going to be, if our rights are going to be infringed upon and if we're going to be in danger. My grandma, she lives in Tucson, Arizona. She is in her late 70s now, and she's not doing too well just physically. She needs to walk with a walker, with cane. We recently went on to a cruise down to Mexico, which was very interesting. Even preparing for that cruise, that was nerve wracking. But she needed a wheelchair for the whole cruise, and it's things like that where I get worried because she's very vulnerable, and she herself is an immigrant, or she is a citizen and an immigrant, and it makes me worried because she has a strong Spanish accent, and so she can definitely easily be identified as someone who came from Mexico. And so definitely thinking about family, thinking about if we want to move back to Mexico. I know that I've talked to some other friends and some other people that I know that are Mexican and that have lived in Mexico or have family that lives in Mexico. And they've mentioned the same types of things about, possibly finding work in Mexico, getting their dual citizenship and moving.
I also was very fearful when Trump was first elected and was first kind of running his campaign on immigration. For me, I think that I was also very worried about my family and my dad works with people who he works in a warehouse, and so I was getting really worried about like if he was going to get raided. He works really like early in the morning, and warehouse workers I know were targeted, and so I was also really worried about my family, and also being from Pomona and it kind of being a hub city. I was worried about my community and my family that were still in Pomona. Right. And then, like we saw pretty much what he said come to fruition. He got reelected within the first few weeks. It was just chaos. We were seeing on the news pretty much people being snatched off the streets. And it was just, it was something that was shaking, like, not only like the country itself, but like the internet, just seeing videos of people literally being taken off the streets. What were some thoughts, like, if you guys ever did see those videos, like, did you ever think to yourself, that could be my family or that could be me, you yourself? So just what were like some thoughts going through your head?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely had moments where I was worried about people in my family. I myself am a very fair skinned, white passing Mexican person. And so I wasn't too worried about me myself being targeted. I have the things that I believe protect me as an American person, which is fair skin and a real ID. Like, I'm not sure if that's going to protect me when it comes down to it, but that's what I justified. That's how I justified it in my head. My aunt, she has a driver's license. She drives around to supermarket stores. She doesn't have a strong grasp of the English language, and she is going places where Latino people go. I was very afraid for her, and she was very worried all the time also. She would only pick specific times to go out during the day, and she would make sure that she was doing what she needed to do and was coming back home very quickly. My aunt used to go visit her brother who lives in Montclair. Uh, she would visit her all the time, during the middle of the day, just to go, stop by, and say hello. It was one of those things that she didn't feel like she even needed to message them. She could just go and stop by, and that was it. Now it went from messaging and being like, "Hey, is it okay for me to come over right now? Like, is it safe?" to basically being like, "I don't think it's safe for me to go. I'm not even going to ask. I'm just not going to go." And that was it's really disheartening to see that because it's like, oh man, like, she her family that she, has gone through her whole life with, they're still around, but she feels like she can't see them because there's people that want her out of the country. And that's the really sad and scary thing. In my work, being a part of school district, are also lots of Latino families, lots of students that are in classes, to learn English. There's students that moved recently, from Mexico to the United States. Immigration is still happening, and it's really scary because their families are being targeted. We had a student, and this is in Claremont. This isn't in Pomona. This isn't in Montclair. This was in Claremont, and their parents were taken. And this was last year. This was a fourth grade student, and that was really shocking. That's the closest that I've gotten to ICE, to that type of removal, and that was really shocking because I believed that wouldn't be something that really would enter my life. I felt like it was something that was going to be just in the news, but I see it. And, Stephanie and I, we drive around and we see cars that have very specialized license plates, and that spooks us. That will freak us out. And we'll look at that license plate and we'll say, where are they going? What's in that car? Who's in that car? And what are they doing? More often than not, that type of suspicion, I feel like protects us. And I feel like it has been one of the things that has prevented us from interacting directly with ICE agents.
Yeah, and I think even now, looking at the specialized license plates or the tags and seeing even tinted out windows with special front covers is really scary. And I think personally, I was monitoring a lot more on social media and seeing different people, like making sure that I had hotline numbers so that whatever area I was in, if I saw ICE or saw something that we thought could be ICE, that we could let somebody know. I think an example that I have is we went out to Vegas, and I think maybe in August of this last year, and the drive over, we were kind of seeing different cars where we were confused on whether it was a rental or an ICE vehicle just because they are so active. California and Nevada border.
Yeah. Again, like we see it on the news, people again being snatched off the streets, unmarked cars, vans, and you just roll up on somebody and just pop out, and it's like you always think to yourself, well, it's never going to happen to me, and that's the scary part. Like you mentioned, like like having a hotline or being active on social media. Do you ever think about like actively protesting and what kind of consequences those might bring? We saw what happened to Alex Preddy. We saw what happened to Renee Good. Do you ever feel that you want to, be an active person in protesting ICE, these ICE and deportation issues? Do you ever think that that could be you?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've had conversations, and I think I've also just thought about it on my own about going to protests. And I think there, where in Claremont, they are pretty active in protesting, and so over there, it's kind of safe, but in other not safe, but I feel like when it's in Claremont, there's like a sense of protection in a way. I feel like when we move closer into the cities, it's not as there are people around it. It's not, it's changes from a protested other people's point of view into something different, maybe.
Yeah, I definitely get worried about violence at protests. My mom likes to protest a lot. She goes to protests in Claremont all the time on the weekends. And I think the thing about the protests in Claremont are that the age group is a lot older. So a lot of these people that are protesting, they don't have the sense of like escalation. They're not going to escalate if the police come to try and shut things down. They're going to stand their ground and they're going to say, this is wrong. They're going to do the most they can with their voice. And I think that I get worried as a young person that the escalation might come from me, that I might be someone that might escalate things further, or that might direct my frustration towards the police rather than towards the protest, and that is something that I think I get worried about, but I think that it's probably something that, shouldn't stop me from going out to protest. But protesting, I feel like it does help in terms of showing who is there, who will support those feelings, because a lot of times when we think about these things, when we see stuff on news, it makes us feel so isolated and it makes us feel so powerless and it makes us feel like no one else is on our team, like things are going poorly and no one cares. But the reality is that everyone still cares, that people are still fighting and people are still standing up. And I think that's one of the very good things about the protests, that it reminds people that they should also stand up and join. And that's one of the ways that things really begin to change. We've seen that in history, but we forget. And now history is being changed. And so it's a scary thing to see where, a lot of the younger generation, they're not going to be able to read about the riots and the protests that happened in the recent past because there's a lot of censorship that is happening in schools, a lot of censorship, and a lot of these students are having a hard time reading along with it, which is really unfortunate. It's something that I've been seeing a lot of, but yeah.
What are some things that your friends, family have kind of planned out ahead with hopefully protect them in the future from being deported? What are some safeguards you guys have talked about?
I think for me personally, my family has discussed applying and beginning the process of dual citizenship for Mexico and making serious moves to move back. We have family and close friends that live in different parts of Mexico. In terms of actually taking action, I don't think that we've really begun the processes. My dad is the one that kind of introduced that idea. And before that, my brother and I hadn't really thought of it. We hadn't thought that that was kind of an option or that my dad had even been thinking about that so much. And that was one of the shocking things is that my brother and I, we were thinking, okay, like, I guess we'll figure out what's going to happen, in America. Like, we'll do our best to vote and we'll, do what we can as citizens. But we weren't thinking about the possibility that we might need to flee the country. And my dad kind of introduced that and was like, dual citizenship is a real possibility and that we should all look into it and that we should think about that seriously. I'm not sure. Outside of that, my mom and her family, they live here in California. They've lived here in California for a long time. My mom grew up in Ontario. A lot of her close friends are here in California, and that's something that she has been worried about. Is she's like, it's a good idea, it's great for the safety and but she's worried about her personal life and her identity changing, and having to basically start over new in a whole other country. And the pressures and the anxieties that an immigrant might feel planning to move to another country. And I think that's one of the really eye opening things. It's like my dad grew up with this you know, childhood, very tumultuous, 7 years old, moves to a new country, has to kind of redefine himself. My grandma had to do so when she was, in motherhood, when she was an adult, having to leave everything behind, all of her family, moving to the United States, moving to California. And I can totally understand how frightening that can be. Right now, it's been such a different, I've introduced the idea to Steph and I think she feels very similarly, where it's like such a change, like having to move from one country to another without the guarantee that you'll be able to see those people again, unless you make plans, unless you try hard, unless you get lucky, unless things go really well, putting into account health and all those things. It's scary looking at the state of the country, the possibilities of what might come in the future if now is the time that we need to escape, so to speak, or if this is the opportunity or if things will kind of close down after, if we won't be able to leave. And I think that's the biggest fear me and my family that I think my dad has is that if we don't jump on the opportunity to leave now, then we ever get to, and we will be stuck in a very bad spot.
My family is still very hopeful that it's not going to come to their door. And so we haven't really talked about a plan, but my family is also, they love this country. They love what it stands for. They love America. And so I've kind of talked to my sisters about immigration a little bit, and I think her stance on it is that she will keep her point of view, and she's not a big protester, but kind of do what she can to protect, quote unquote, protect the country that she loves and that she resonates with. I feel like moving to a different country, like Ben's family, isn't really an option for mine. And so I think, we have talked about it. And personally, I think it's something that I would be willing to explore. But my family, they feel like this is the greatest country in the world and that they need to stay here and protect it. I personally think that um, we that it's not starting with Trump's administration and it's not going to end with Trump's administration. I think that immigration has been an issue that we've been dealing with for a really long time. I think unfortunately where it is at right now it's just so awful and unimaginable, and we have to rally as a people to figure out what we need to do about it. Like I don't think that, like you said, Trump's not going anywhere. His ideals aren't going anywhere. His administration isn't going anywhere. JD Vance isn't going anywhere. Like it's going to be here, unfortunately.
It's almost like living in a nightmare almost for a lot of people right now. And it's really scary. What are some thoughts or opinions or words for other people that could possibly be in the same boat as you may be with your families and stuff?
Would say try not to lose hope. Definitely spend time with your family. Enjoy nature. Don't get so caught up in how frightening things are because we know it. We all know it. It's scary. It's scary right now. But don't forget to take a break sometimes and enjoy people that are around you. And remember that, it's not over yet. We can still fight. We can still stand up. And that's what we need to do. Talk to people. Talk to your friends. Talk to your coworkers. Learn about the people around you and remind them that this is happening, this is real, and they need to voice their opinions. They need to stand up for what they believe in, and they need to stand up against Trump. That we all need to, because this is no longer something about political parties. This is no longer something about political views or personal views. Trump is a tyrant. Trump is taking away our rights, and we can't stand for it. None of us can.
Organize, protect your community. I think that we really need to be looking out for each other right now. I really think that this is a good time to bring community together and to talk to your family and to voice your opinions and to not lose hope, but also not to just talk about it online. Talk to your families, talk to your friends, get your voice out, educate yourself, learn, but also read about it. Don't just stay online, but also know that I feel like change starts locally. Um, Vote, but also learn about who your politicians are, learn about who is in office right now, learn about who is in support of raids in your area, learn about why this is going on, learn about there are hotels that are allowing ICE to stay on their premises, near schools, near churches, near communities. Protect each other. Don't lose hope.
Thanks for tuning into Crossing Lines. I'm Bianca Porras. Please help share these stories by hitting the like and subscribe button. Until next time.